Alright, next video. I made this one just after the previous one because I want to find a ZvP. Whoops, I don't have sound here, but okay. It is really loud, the sound. So I'm gonna turn it down a bit to 2020. Alright. Anyways, I realized that the previous video settings were 720p, and that's all I changed was that I made it to 1080p because videos you can do uploading on YouTube is not that hard on the computer or whatever, so it looks really shitty in 720p, which honestly is okay for streaming, but I made it better for video is 1080p. Anyways, the state of the ladder in any ladder is that it took me like fucking 30 games to find like a worthy ZvP replay, because the entire ladder is just ZVZ, 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 which I'm not bad at. It's honestly I'm doing pretty okay at because it's just Ling Baneling shit, and my micro is not the worst it's been so far compared to everyone else. Like it's not terrible, it's not amazing either, but it's all right. I'm not losing that many games because of micro. I am, however, losing to macro games because all these macro games are just shitting on me so far. This game I win, but it was nasty, it was dirty, it was not good, and it's on Runes of Ceres, which is one of those big maps. And the problem with big maps, a point I wanted to bring is that the problem with big maps is that you can't, like, when you spread creep and get map vision, it takes forever compared to, like, last video's Laralac Crest. You can just, you spread creep and all of a sudden you're halfway point, right? Like, it took really quick. But in this late game, like, there's so many bases for two people that what ends up happening is that what happened to me is that there's some people who just drop a base here, and then you're doing all this harass, all these battles, all these macro, micro, all these crazy things, and all of a sudden they just drop a base here, and they drop a base here, and they drop a base here, and like one burrowed link isn't gonna do anything. All right, pooping creep, one burrowed link. They just need like one stalker, one observer, and they'll clear it out. So it's really hard to keep track of all these different bases if they just fucking do whatever they want. And just so I think map vision is really big part of it. And there's some times where I just walk into a base and there's a planetary and I can't do anything. Or like sometimes I walk into a base and there's like 4 cannons, even the mothership core's not there, or maybe it is there, but like 4 cannons and like I can't do anything with a small counterattacking force. So I think it's very important to recognize when the base is being set up where there's no defenses. Like a planetary does not just fucking magically just appear. It has to build and shit. It has to land as a CC and then morph into or change into a planetary fortress. Or when you're making a nexus, you gotta make the pylons and then the cannons and then whatever. It can't just fucking magically appear. So there has to be some sort of happy medium where you can do something with like 10 lings or something. And, yeah. Next point I want to bring up is the opening. So in this opening, compared to ZVT last game, I made a shit ton of queens. I only made 1 queen here. And I made a really early third base. So what I like to do is I just make a bunch of drones. And then once I'm making my 3rd queen, I get my 3rd hatch. Or I actually make it like earlier than that, actually. When I have my 1st or 2nd queen out, I'm trying to get that 3rd hatch as soon as possible. Because as you can see right now, I am floating minerals. And I have 1 gas geyser mining, albeit with 2 drones right now. But like the bases are saturated in minerals, so if you don't have the 3rd base up early, you're going to be at that point where you're just in a shitty position, in my experience anyways. So the thing is that in ZvP what I find is that, yeah, they're fucking getting a 3rd nexus off of 1 gate and 1 stargate, which they can do because photon overcharge is cap of pride, as I mentioned last video. And they just photon overcharge. I can't defend it. I can't harass it without going all in. And in my experience, I don't really go all in, but against this sort of stuff, because when I do, it is disastrous. And when I see it, When people do it, execute it better, it's still also disastrous. Most of the time, I feel like pros, at least pro games, they can defend it. But yeah. So here we go. We're just droning. What I found out is that Protoss is ahead of Zerg in workers in macro games, or any game, I guess, when it's like the beginning part of the game, when they're like around 32 to 34, is when Zerg is equal to Protoss in workers, and then after that is when your 3 hatch injects are up, and then you just blitz ahead. But at the same time, it's not like where Protosses go like, oh, fucking Zerg, just fucking make 20 drones, like 3 base instantly saturated. It's not like that. The Protoss is ahead, and then you have to be diligent into making drones. Even now, it's only 56 against 50, which, honestly, if they didn't have Phoenixes out harassing anything and I wasn't making anything else, I'd be making nothing but drones right now. And I also have a big problem where against Phoenix harass or any sort of harass, it seems like I just lose all my shit and they lose nothing, which is kind of I just need to take better care of my units, I guess. Overlords, Lings, when they run in, I tend to have them all die. Even Queens, they sort of get picked off, but I guess they were kind of lucky now. Unless they get killed right now. Honestly, I think they could have at least did some damage. Anyways. Next thing I want to talk about is the metagame right now for Protoss is they make fucking Immortals off 2 Robo. In this game, it's 3 Robo. I watched this replay beforehand, just now. But it's 2 Robo usually. And then they make Immortals, Archons, chargelots. And then they A-move, and then you die. So it's like Protoss never changes. They always just A-move, and then you always just lose all your shit, and you die. There's some sentries here. Sentries aren't obsolete. I definitely think that in earlier game, if a Zerg player just maxes out on Roach, Hydra, and maybe a couple of Ravager and attack, you need those sentries to definitely branch off, especially in this map pool where bases are so open. So yeah, so right now the worker count is actually they're ahead. 66 is about when they're 3 base saturated. They're pretty much perfectly 3 base saturated. I'm not. But right now, I think I should be making those drones, which I am. I felt like I could have made them a bit earlier as well. I do have some Hydra Ling, which I don't know if I made too many of. I don't think it's that big of a mistake. I'm not in like the... Oh, okay, this was a huge mistake. Yeah, so I had that amount where I didn't have enough to attack, and I didn't have enough to... where I had too much to defend. So I think next time I just make less. Maybe 1 Hydra for every Phoenix, or maybe even 2 or 3 more. Then they have Phoenix, and then have a couple Lings just to scout around. And right now, like talking about the map vision again, I don't really... I mean, I see quite a bit of the map with the watchtowers, which is okay now, but since they're Phoenixes, I do need to have Overlord vision after the Phoenix are gone. So in this game, I didn't go everything, right? I went the units, and I'm making units, and I have the drones, and I have 1 evolution chamber. Infestation pit, I'm not getting the upgrades. Roach one, I got the speed upgrade. So honestly, like the upgrades, they're meager, they're mediocre. Sorry, that's the word. And honestly, I think I could have done better with triple Evo chambers, but in this game I didn't do it. 3 Robos is a lot of Immortals, and they do. So what ends up happening is that in the engagements I also suffer at is they go charge lots, they charge, and then the Archons are right behind them, A-moving, and then the Immortals are in the back, and they just keep shooting. It reminds me a lot of ZvT when you go Ling Bane Ling Muta, because it's like Zerg just go, they A-move with their entire army, and then they lose all their Ling Bane, and then they try to retain their Mutalisk. I think Protoss, in this composition, that's what they're doing in this meta, is that they A-move with the charge lots and the Archons, which are gateway units, which you can make like at a snap of your fingers. And the Immortals are the things that take long, but you retain that Immortal count because they're in the back, like Ling Bane Muta, where Mutas are in the back shooting. And they retain that Immortal count, and they trade off all their Zealots and Archons, and they just retain that Immortal count. So how do you know when you're winning? Or how do you see a textbook like Protoss victory is the A move, they lose all their charge lots? and then they have like pretty much all their immortals, save one or two. What ends up happening is, how do you know engagement's going good even though both players are still at a huge army supply? Is that when their immortals are in danger of dying, and they do die, even though they have high supply, it might be in shitty units, which die easily, as opposed to immortals, which, as their name, they don't die. So in this game, I did have a large enough army. I made Ravagers. I don't like Ravagers, but I made them because I had a lot of gas, I guess. And so they were trying to walk across the map and kill my shit, like I said last game and last video, and they didn't do that. And Ravagers, what they are good for, I found, is that to dodge corrosive bile shots, which this person didn't do, by the way. You need to move. You need to sort of kite around them. You gotta dodge them, and by dodging them, you don't. It does buy you time. So the Protoss player wasn't able to just walk across the map and kill me in 30 seconds. It took a bit of time, and they are going to attack now. And so this is without any sort of Heart of the Swarm units except the Ravager. They didn't really do much. And right now I have to, like, if I were to defend against this as Heart of the Swarm, this is what I'm doing. Is that I'm trying to fungal, make sure I kill off all the Zealots. And as you can see, they still have Immortals that didn't die at all. But all their bulk is dead, so I feel like if they kept attacking against the Remax right now, and they are killing my shit, because I didn't defend this as good, because I feel like what you need to defend is Lurkers, and I want to talk about Lurkers after this engagement, because Lurker Den was late, and I just got it now. But the important thing is, I'm not dead, and I barely hold this off. And so, yeah, it looks like that. Because I did lose more. But right now you see that it looked really good for them, and then the Remax killed them off. And they should have just backed up and retained their Immortal count. But as you can see, the engagement is going good as the Immortals start to die off. They killed my 4th and made the 5th, which is what I'm trying to mine off now. And I felt like they could have... If they made a 4th base while that attack was going on, like they were going to attack, they just drop a 4th, get rid of this shit, drop a 4th, and then after that engagement's finished, they come back and then they just transfer this. Then they're in an amazing position and they can Remax. Whereas I just used my Remax to defend against that attack. So, yeah. Staple thing that I always see against botched up shitty engagements like the one I just did where Zerg loses is that War Prism harasses get that much stronger. Bases that die, like harassing on all the different Zerg bases, are that much stronger because I don't have all these units to split across the map. Alright, so finishing about that, this is why you need Lurkers, this is why people get Lurkers. I hate Lurkers. Never have I ever seen someone go Lurkers in ZvP, and then those, like, you win the engagement, as in, you don't lose those Lurkers, you keep all your Lurkers, the Protoss army just loses all their shit, and you lose, like, very little. Like, you know how Protoss balls just walk over an army and they lose 20 supply and the other person loses 100? That never happens when you get Lurkers. And I feel like I've never been in a situation where it went like, wow, those Lurkers just, like, they just won the game instantly or easily. It's always like, what ends up happening is that Zerg player loses their Lurkers. And I think I was talking about getting the Nexus, try to harass, but I mean, I sent like 10 links there and they just need to warp in 3 Zealots and I can't even harass it. So the Lurkers, I feel like they sort of die off pretty easily, and they just trade. They never trade efficiently, they trade, which is something that is kind of disgusting as an idea, but I now see the light, and I now see that they are necessary, because if you don't get them, and they run at you with chargelot&archon immortal, bad things happen, which did happen, and I feel like I'm not necessarily game losing behind, but I'm definitely behind in this game. If they got Storm, then it'd be even worse. But now that I have lurkers, they can't just run me over now. And like I said, I can't have a lot of map presence. I can't harass and have my units in a good defensive position. Yeah, so lurkers, they remind me of two units. They remind me of the siege tank because they're obviously sieging units. And not only that, but you have to space them out. And what I find is that a lot of people who use lurkers, they space them out to make it so that not all of your lurkers attack at the same time. Well, that's kind of cool. They space them out as in like they have a siege line, a siege lurker line, and they don't necessarily all attack at the same time, but they do attack as your enemy player attacks into you. Like, you're gonna lose the front lurkers like this right now. They're not they're not all bunched up here or bunched up here. They're like right now they're in a line, and they right now like they're maxed out, and I'm not. I'm really not. But the lurkers are in that line, and so that's kind of like a siege tank, and they have long range. The other unit it reminds me of is the brood lord. Is that if you just have lurkers and you have no support, you're gonna lose them, even though Wings of Liberty, Infestor, Broodlord OP, and I thought I got on that train, and I made pure Broodlords, and then they just blinked their Stalkers. Or worse comes to worse, like the most embarrassing thing is when they have Max Marines, and then they just walk in and kill all your Broodlords, because you had no sort of support for them. So I feel like if you don't have support, you lose your shit, so you need support for your Lurkers as well. And you need those supporting units tanking for your lurkers, because as soon as your lurkers are getting hit, it's bad. Even if they're shooting, it's bad. It's like hydra lists. You need support. You can't just have max hydras. So in this instance, I do fungal, which cancels all these zealots from attacking momentarily, and they're just running their shit. Blinding Cloud fungal, really nice by me. So this is how I hold it off, which I definitely think I did a good job of here, because I think all counts I should have just lost the game. I sniped all the overseers, and now there are only 3 lurkers left. I'm surviving. I took a cost-efficient engagement because I was losing in the units lost tab before. And so that's one of the things, is that you can snipe all their observers, but I feel like that's not the correct way to defend against a push. I think the correct way to defend the push is to kill all their units with your lurkers. So I think how they could have done it is if they just had some High Templars to feedback and storm that roach hydra, because if they do that and I have to move them back, my lurkers are all exposed and I pretty much die. So yeah. So the game is, now I'm ahead, and now I'm the one who's like plopping down bases, or at least this one and this one, or I retook this one. And I'm plopping down bases, and they have no idea. They're doing the same, I have no idea. They have 2 pylons here, but they don't have a mothership core, I don't think. They do, but it's here. So if I do counterattack, I just have to make sure it just doesn't get shit on by 1 warpin. And another thing is that if they're warping in back home, they're not warping in fucking warp prisms. So yeah. So lurkers. So I think the rest of the game is pretty straightforward. I like doing the roach, hydra, ling, infestor, viper. So like pretty much garbage can units with high tech support. But I feel like triple Evo Chamber is the best way, because I didn't make any lings this game, or in this sort of army to army composition. They have a funny arc here, but yeah, I'm kind of almost, I can be maxed out, and I burnt all my lurkers here, so this is one thing I don't want to have happen. That's kind of cool, again, the archon dying. Is that you have your lurkers and they're in front of your other units, so I think the lesson to be learned here is that you shouldn't do that, and you should have your lurkers behind your other units. And against like this amazing arc, I'm just gonna lose all of them. So I do end up losing all the lurkers. I have only 3 left, and I'm like, oh shit, I couldn't get really amazing fungal, so I made a wall of infested Terrans. If I want to wait for fungal, I could have waited until they're here to fungal, but I still have one lurker here, and I managed to trade, like, once again, even if I had the lurkers in a better position, I feel like they wouldn't engage, but since I had them in a shitty position, they engaged. And since they engaged, it wasn't like, wow, lurkers are OP, like, they traded evenly. That's kind of what I was talking about earlier. Even if I took a better engagement, I feel like that's still the same. So, yeah. They're pretty much dead now. And their transition is High Templar. I feel like they should get Storm. That's the transition. But it's kind of a low econ game at this point. Yeah, it's like 2 or like 1.5 base of saturation. It is 2 base saturation. Yeah, it's 2 base against like 2 base. I have a bit more than 2 base right now. A little bit more. It's not. No, it's about 2 base. I have more from the gas though, and it's like 66. So it's like 3 base worth of drones, but only 92 base worth of shit, except the gas. So yeah, I think the lurkers definitely need to have them behind the army and have them a little bit spread out so they don't just get run over, because the running over is the problem in this matchup. So looking at the final engagement here, another nice little thing, abduct of 2 immortal war prisms. Blinding Cloud and Fungal for the immortals I think is the way to go, unless you go brood lords, but that's just another playstyle, I guess. It's a huge transition, and I end up killing everything with 3/2 roaches, and that's the game. So yeah, that's this video. Thanks for watching. Till next time.